So, as you've heard, my name is Jindřich Dušek, and I study physics at MathPhys. And I've made a few websites already. I do know some HTML, but I'm not really a web professional or anything. I don't even study IT. And as you perhaps will see further, I couldn't really work as a web developer nowadays. But in order to make your own websites, you don't really need to have any sort of special skills. So that's quite fortunate. And so because of that, I think I'll be able to tell you something of interest. And I hope that this presentation will show you how to create your own website and will spark interest in you. And unfortunately, this talk will be quite short, so you won't be able to really get everything because the subject is quite deep. But I encourage you to research further, commit to your own research. And I've even sent a presentation. This presentation that you're seeing, I've sent it to the messages that you see. You can see. I don't know where, but I'm sure you'll find it. And if you have some questions, this is my webpage, jiru.cz, because I'm Jindřich Dušek, so it's jiru.cz. So I've prepared a few websites to sort of get the taste of the modern web, but I'm afraid I'll skip them because we don't have that much time, and get straight to the reasons why you would like to set up your own website in 2021. So the first reason I've listed, and perhaps the strongest one for someone, is privacy. Because let's be honest, we all have our personal websites nowadays. Everyone has them, but they don't belong to us. They belong to some shady corporations that evade taxes. And I'm talking about Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, or other social networks. Those can be regarded as some sort of websites of our own. But the thing is, we don't have any control over them. And they, quite frankly, collect a lot of data about us. Sometimes even information we don't know that even exists about us. So some people are not really comfortable with it. So if you want to evade it and still have some sort of social media presence or something, you can create your own website. Second reason why you should want to create your own website is independence. Because by creating your own website, you don't have to be constrained by a character limit on your posts. You cannot be banned from commenting because it's your own website, right? You also get to choose almost everything about your presentation. Some sites are more visual, some are more text-oriented, and you're not forced to post in any specific style. You can do everything you want, so you can leave a more nuanced expression on your audience, which is a big benefit in my book. The third reason why you should want to create your own website is the state of the modern web. So in this slide, where I've listed a few examples of websites, there are some old websites, and then there are new websites. And I've also listed how many megabytes they take and how long they take to load. And you can see that the old websites usually take around a couple of kilobytes, and the new ones take like megabytes to download, which is like 1,000 times more things you have to download. And they take a ridiculous amount of time to load. So that's a really bad thing about today's web, in my opinion, because you can perhaps see it in your own experience that the technology is getting better every day, every minute, but the web pages, they don't like magically take lesser time to load, which like should happen, right? It's like there's Moore's law that every like 2 years the technology gets twice as fast, but the web doesn't really follow this. In fact, it gets slower and slower. Second thing I don't like about the modern World Wide Web is that it is dominated by giants. I mean, social networks, mainstream news outlets, and even Wikipedia. Those are like cornerstones of the modern web, and it's basically the experience we have with the web. So I think there even was a survey in Africa, and more people said that they knew Facebook than said that they knew internet. It's like ridiculous. And there is even a psychological effect called anchoring, which if you know it, means that we may be primed to think about certain subjects or in a certain way just by consuming a set range of like-minded websites. So I think this lack of diversity on web really limits what we can take from the web. In my opinion, it would be better, far better, in fact, if there were hundreds of small web pages that you use for different things, like a small encyclopedia for physics, small encyclopedia for biology, and I don't know, personal website of someone for something. I think it would be better. So this is what I think is wrong with the modern state of the web. Another reason is that it's just interesting, because web pages are interesting. At the beginning of this century, there was a so-called dot-com bubble on the stock market, and it was quite a significant occasion, a very big market crash, which was all caused by people investing into companies that just focused on internet. And I think that this stock bubble was kind of justified, because if we look at our modern lives, then everything we do is somehow interconnected with the internet. I think that the internet is the primary means of interacting with the world of today. So I find it pretty scary. It's like a Black Mirror episode, but also I think it's exhilarating, and taking part in it is what you can do right now if you create your own webpage. So that's one of my favorite reasons. But actually, my favorite reason is magic. Because if you look at some of these websites, this is a website, cameronsworld.net. I have a link at it in my presentation, and it's a compilation of websites that used to exist but no longer are maintained from a bygone era of 1990s, and it's pretty crazy. It's just a visual cluster of weird stimuli. Sorry, and I can't even know how to describe it, but I just find it awesome. I find it magical, and even though websites nowadays don't really seem this crazy, don't really seem like this, they're not that crazy. You can create something with your own personal expression, and which is unique, because I think web pages are a unique media that is fun to explore. So those are my 5 reasons to create your own website. I hope you are convinced. If not, I'm sorry. I'm still going to explain how to do it, but perhaps the process will convince you further. So how to do it, how to create your own website. Quite frankly, before we get to the hard work, I need to explain a few concepts. The first concept is, how does the internet actually work? That is, how do I actually how do I see the website? So I'm going to explain how to view a website from a server by typing a URL into your browser. So it begins by you typing the URL into your web browser. And then your personal computer communicates with your Wi-Fi router and tells the router, I want to go to this URL. Then the router goes to a so-called DNS server, which is domain name server, and asks the domain name server, where is the computer where I'll find my information about this URL? And the DNS server tells you, tells the router the IP address. The IP address is like a normal address of a house, but it's an address of a computer in the virtual space. It's a unique identifier. So now that you get this identifier, you go to the computer and ask the computer, please give me the data of your website, of the website I'm trying to access, and hopefully the so-called web server, it's called a server because it serves you the data, will give you the data. So this is a diagram of it. It's slightly different than what I was explaining. This is I hope you can see my mouse. So I'm going to check for a second. Yeah, you actually see my cursor. Yeah, that's good. So this PC, and this is your computer. Like, this is the monitor, but imagine it's a computer. Then it communicates with the router, which would be here. It's actually not on the picture, but you can imagine it is there. The router then goes to the DNS server, and then this server finds finds the real server where the website is stored, and then it goes back to you. So this is how the internet works, and I still need to explain a bit. Still need to explain some terms, so bear with me. The first is IP address. I've already described it a bit, but I'm going to describe it in a more detailed fashion. There are actually two IP addresses, two types of IP address. One is public and the second one is private. So the public IP address is the address of your router. It's basically one household, you could say, or no, it's one house. And then this private IP address is a concrete address of your own computer, because usually there are like 7 or like lots of devices that are connected to one Wi-Fi router, and each has its own private address. So and only the router communicates with the internet, so only it has this public IP address. Both the private IP address and the public IP address change very often, so it's kind of temporary. You can find your own IP address by visiting this website, and it's the public one, because the private IP address actually is private. You cannot find it by going on the internet. Yeah. So this is an IP address. Then there is a web protocol. Web protocol is basically a means for two computers to talk to each other, because they can only send each other bits of information, and by bits I mean the term like 0 or 1. And they need to understand what those bits means, bits mean. And there are different protocols. For example, FTP stands for File Transfer Protocol. This is if you want to transfer a file. HTTP is for websites and stuff like that. If you're interested why protocols need to exist, look up those two keywords. And the third and last thing are markup languages versus programming languages. Programming languages are languages that you can use to create programs like web editor, like a web browser or text editor. And markup languages are used to create documents. Like this presentation was made using a markup language called LaTeX. And HTML is one markup language that we'll need to create our own website. Okay, so now that we know how the internet works, we can write our own web page. And to write our own web page, we need the 3 components of web design. That is, firstly, HTML and CSS. This is the basis of web design. This is the bread and butter. It's basically the markup language that you use to create a document, because a web page is really, it's just a document. If I show you one example web page, it's just a document with some text and some images. So in order to create this document, you need this HTML and CSS. Then there is PHP and JavaScript, and I won't explain them because you don't really need them if you're a beginner, like you probably are. Yes, they're not really necessary, they're not really required. So I won't explain them. So now if you can write your own website with HTML, which is this markup language, then you need to host the website, because you can have it written, but there actually needs to be a server, if you remember, which serves people the web page. So you need to pay this server, and you also need a domain name, because people need to find your website by typing a URL into their browser. So you have to pay for the DNS server to have a record, right? So that people could find your website. And those things are usually pretty cheap. Like I've written here that a server costs about 30 crowns. That's like €1 per month, and domain name costs about 100 crowns per year. So that's also not very expensive. And you can purchase it on a site like vedos.cz. There are tons of sites where you can purchase web hosting, but I use this one and it's very comfortable. So this is the site you can use. If you don't want to buy web hosting, you can host on your own computer. This is called self-hosting, but it's a rather cumbersome process, and your computer needs to be online 24 hours, 7 days a week, because it's actually the server which gives people the website. So if you turn it off, then people won't be able to get the website. So it's rather unpractical. I don't think many people have a spare computer which could act as their server. So that's why I recommend purchasing or like renting a server from this website. So now we know everything that is really needed to build your own website. First is to learn how HTML works. Second thing we need to do is actually write the website we're interested in having, because not just the knowledge suffices, we also have to create it. Third thing we need to do is buy the domain name, like the URL when we can find the web. The fourth thing is to buy the web hosting, the server, which gives people the website, and put the web page we wrote on this web server. And that's really it. And those 4 easy steps, which are actually quite hard, you can get the website up and running. And so the most difficult thing about those steps are probably steps number 1 and 2, the beginning step, because learning a new markup language can be quite difficult, and actually creating our own website can also be difficult because it's a lot of work. But I will give you a little example of how it could be done, so that you know it's like nothing all that complicated. So I've got here my web browser, which we'll need because it's a website. And then I have here my file explorer. Yeah, you probably have file explorers in your computer. And I've created this file called mywebpage.html. It's an HTML file, so it ends in HTML. And I will open it in a text editor. So if I write something, save it, it appears in the file. So how about I write something? Yeah, so I've now written something into the document, and now what I can do to view the web page is just click on it and drag it into the browser. And if I do it, the web page gets displayed. So you can see that the contents of the web page have been displayed. So it works. But this is not really a pretty web page by any means. It's quite ugly. You need some style. So style is done in this way. You need to write it's called tags, which tell you what style you want to apply to certain things. So those tags, H1, stand for heading. So now that I've written like that, I can refresh the web page, and I see that a heading has been created. Because yeah, I wrote a heading here. Also, I can include images by writing this tag. It's called img, like image, and src is like source. So I write the name of the image. There is one convenient image placed in my folder already, so I can include it. Now that it's included, we can go and refresh the page. Oh, nothing happens. Wait a bit. Oh, yes, I made a mistake. I wrote SCR instead of SRC. It should be like SRC, like source. There was a typo. If you write the typo, it doesn't work. So that's a bad thing, but it should work now. Yeah, and the image is here. Unfortunately, it's not really formatted in like any pretty way, but that's because we didn't really try. There are ways to format it to make it a bit prettier. But this is basically the concept. This is the gist of creating our web page. You'll be doing this the whole time. There's nothing really all that special. You just edit a text file, and then you learn more styles to the web page. And if you actually want to learn more about this, learn more expressions that you can utilize in this HTML, I will recommend this website called W3 Schools, where you can learn it for free. And it shouldn't really take long to learn some basic stuff, but the more advanced things you want to have on your webpage, the more difficult it will be. Also, you can use WordPress or HTML frameworks to make your work a bit easier of creating the web page. WordPress is a graphical user interface which you can use to create your web page without needing to be able to code, without needing to know anything. You just click and things appear on your screen. It's kind of good if you want to collaborate with other people and want everyone to be able to edit it, but I don't recommend it because it's slow, messy, and buggy. I've tried it myself, and I just don't recommend it. And if you're a bit more advanced, you can use HTML frameworks. Which is like a template which will help you to write HTML code faster. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say, because unfortunately my time is running out. So I'll quickly summarize what I've talked about to refresh your memory. So firstly, I talked about why I think it's important to create a web page in 2021. Secondly, I talked about what you need for it and how to learn HTML. And I hopefully also told you that actually publishing your own web page and running it isn't anything difficult. Anyone can do it, and it just costs a small amount of money every month. So thank you for your attention. This was my presentation. I hope you've learned something new. And if you have some questions, you can ask me now.